Wren Parker didn't plan to cry in her boss's office. She just wanted to drop the letter, turn around, and walk away before her voice broke again. But when she saw Evan Pierce standing by the window, sleeves rolled up, tie loose, the afternoon light catching the faint exhaustion in his eyes, the words caught in her throat. "I'm resigning," she managed to whisper. Evan turned, slow and deliberate. His eyes flicked from her trembling hands to the envelope she held, then back to her face. Something unreadable passed through his expression. Part disbelief, part concern. "Sit," he said quietly, not as a command, as a request. She shook her head. "Please, I can't." "Wren," he said again, his tone lower this time, steady, grounding. "Sit down." That voice had always done something to her. The kind of voice that could hold a meeting room silent or calm a storm. Today it cracked something inside her. She sat. Not because she wanted to, but because she couldn't hold herself up anymore. The letter slipped from her hand and fell between them. "What happened?" he asked, stepping closer. "You're one of the best on my team, and now you're quitting out of nowhere?" She laughed bitterly, the kind of laugh that hurts. People leave when they've got nothing left. He frowned. "Nothing left." Her eyes stung. "I can't do this anymore, Evan. I'm tired of pretending I'm okay. I'm tired of showing up when I don't even feel alive." For a long second, he said nothing. The office was quiet except for the low hum of the air conditioner and the faint rustle of the paper between them. Then, softly, "This isn't about work, is it?" She met his gaze, and something inside her just broke. The walls she'd been holding up, the pretense of strength, the fake smiles. All of it crumbled in one breath. "It's about him," she whispered. "He left, and I can't breathe without feeling like I'm the reason." Evan didn't move at first. His jaw tightened, a flicker of pain, not anger, flashing across his features. He didn't ask who he was. He already knew. Sean Curtis, the name that used to light up her phone every lunch break. The one that made her smile when she thought no one was watching. He exhaled slowly and took another step closer. "Wren," he said, quieter now. "You don't walk away from your whole life because someone broke your heart." "I'm not walking away," she said, voice trembling. "I'm collapsing." Something in that sentence tore through him. Before he could stop himself, Evan moved around the desk and knelt in front of her. Her head was down, her shoulders shaking. He wanted to say something, anything, but instead, he reached for her hand. It wasn't calculated. It wasn't professional. It was human. Her fingers trembled in his, soft and cold. When she finally looked up, her tears shimmered under the dull office light. For a moment they just stared, breathing the same heavy air, two people quietly falling apart in different ways. Then, before either of them could think, the space between them disappeared. His hand cupped her cheek. Hers gripped his shirt, pulling him closer as though she was trying to keep herself from vanishing. The kiss wasn't planned. It wasn't soft or polite. It was broken, desperate, the kind of kiss that happens when silence isn't enough anymore. She tasted of salt and ache. He tasted of control unraveling. When they finally pulled away, both were breathless. Wren pressed a hand to her mouth as if trying to catch her breath, or the moment itself. "I shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "Then tell me to stop caring," he said quietly. "Because I can't." She stared at him, this man who wasn't supposed to see her like this, who wasn't supposed to feel this much. For the first time in months, her chest didn't hurt as much. And for the first time ever, Evan Pierce didn't care about rules, titles, or boundaries. He only cared that she stayed. And right there, in a quiet office with nothing but the hum of the city outside, Wren Parker's resignation letter stayed on the desk, unopened, while two broken people began something neither of them had planned. Wren's heart was still racing when Evan stood up. The silence between them was louder than any words could have been. The air felt charged, like something irreversible had just happened. She rose quickly, brushing her palms down her skirt, trying to gather herself. "I need to go," she murmured, her voice barely steady. Evan didn't stop her at first. He watched her reach for the doorknob, her hand trembling just enough for him to notice. Then, before she could twist it open, he said softly, "Please don't walk out like this." She froze. His tone wasn't commanding. It wasn't even confident. It was low, vulnerable, like a man begging without words. "Evan, we shouldn't have," she started, but he was already walking toward her. "Maybe not," he interrupted quietly. "But I'm not letting you leave in pieces." Ren's chest tightened. She reached again for the door, needing space, air, anything. But then came a soft click. He had locked it. She turned to face him, stunned. "Evan, I'm not trapping you," he said immediately, hands raised, palms open. I need you to stop running for 5 minutes. Just 5. There was something about his voice, steady but almost pleading, that made her heartbeat falter. Ren's fingers brushed the edge of the desk behind her. "You can't just lock your door because I'm upset." He exhaled through his nose, quiet frustration in his expression. "You're not just upset, Ren. You're breaking." The words hit harder than she expected. Because he was right. She was breaking. "Evan, I can't do this right now," she whispered, turning away. He took one careful step closer. "You think quitting will make the pain stop? You think hiding from this place will erase him?" She swallowed, blinking fast. "You don't understand." "I do," he said, his voice rougher now. "I've watched you walk in here every day pretending you're fine, smiling when you want to cry. Do you think I don't notice? You think I haven't seen how much you've been holding back?" Her throat burned. "Why do you care?" He hesitated, and that pause told her everything. Because he did. More than he should. More than was safe. "I care," he said finally. "Because watching you hurt like this feels wrong. Because I see you trying to disappear. And I can't just sit behind my desk and let that happen." The words hung heavy between them. She didn't move. Neither did he. Then Evan stepped closer, slow enough that she could have stopped him. But she didn't. His hand brushed a tear from her cheek before it could fall. "Let me help you," he said softly. She wanted to say no. She wanted to keep the distance, rebuild her walls. But her voice betrayed her. "How?" He took her hand again, the same way he did before. Gently, carefully, like she might break if he held on too tight. "Start by staying," he said. "Don't make any decisions tonight. Don't run. Just stay." Her gaze dropped to the floor. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," he said quietly. "But you don't have to do hard things alone." There was something in his eyes, not pity, but understanding. Something raw and unpolished that made her believe him, even when she didn't want to. When he finally unlocked the door, she didn't move. He waited. She looked at him. At the man who had just kissed her, seen her cry, and still looked at her like she was more than the mess she felt inside. "I'll stay," she said, almost in a whisper. Evan nodded once, almost like a silent promise. "Good." As she stepped back from the door, the world outside the office went on. Phones ringing, footsteps echoing, life continuing. But inside, something had changed. For the first time since her heartbreak, Ren Parker wasn't just surviving the day. She was beginning to feel again. The office was quieter than usual the next morning. Ren sat at her desk long before the others arrived, her resignation letter tucked in the bottom drawer, right beside the courage she didn't yet know what to do with. She hadn't slept. Her mind replayed the kiss, the locked door, the way Evan had looked at her like she mattered. It scared her, because she wasn't ready for any of it. When Evan's door finally opened, their eyes met through the glass. He didn't summon her. He didn't need to. She stood up and walked in on her own. He was at the coffee machine pouring 2 cups. One black, one with cream, just the way she liked it. That he didn't ask if she wanted it. He simply pushed it toward her when she sat. "Thanks," she murmured. He nodded. "Rough night." A humorless smile flickered across her lips. "You could say that." Evan leaned back in his chair, studying her quietly. "You said something yesterday about not being able to breathe without feeling like you're the reason he left." Ren looked down at her cup. Her hands tightened around it. "Yeah," she whispered. He didn't rush her, didn't speak, just waited, patient, steady. I was with Sean for 3 years, she began. 3 years of plans, promises, and pretending everything was fine. She let out a shaky breath. He said he loved me, and maybe he did, but not enough to stay when things got hard. Evan's eyes softened. What happened? She swallowed. He said I made him feel small, that I was too focused on work, too ambitious, too everything. He said he wanted someone softer, someone who wouldn't compete with him. Her voice cracked on the last word. Evan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. I begged him to talk it through, she went on. I offered to step back, slow down, do whatever he needed. I thought love meant adjusting yourself until the other person felt comfortable. A bitter laugh escaped her. Turns out it just meant disappearing piece by piece. Evan leaned forward, elbows on the desk. You didn't lose him because you were too much, Ren. You lost him because he was too little. Her eyes lifted, glassy and uncertain. You don't know that. I do. His tone was firm now, not harsh, protective. Any man who feels threatened by a woman's strength doesn't deserve to stand next to her. The words hung in the air. Something in her chest unclenched. Just a little. She looked away, blinking hard. You sound like someone who's learned that the hard way. He gave a small, knowing smile. Maybe I have. Silence filled the space again. Not the awkward kind, but the quiet that happens when two people are thinking the same thing but are too afraid to say it aloud. Then Ren spoke softly. You know what hurts the most? Evan shook his head. It's that I still wake up expecting a message from him. I still check my phone. And every time I realize he's really gone, it feels like losing him all over again. He watched her closely, the pain in her voice sinking under his skin. You're grieving, he said simply. It's okay to admit that. She met his gaze. Grieving someone who's still alive feels pathetic. It feels human, he corrected. Her lips parted, but no words came. He stood and moved to the edge of his desk, leaning close enough for her to see the faint lines of tiredness around his eyes. You don't have to erase your pain to start again, Ren. You just have to stop letting it define you. The way he said her name made her heart falter again. Why do you keep doing this? She asked quietly. Doing what? Seeing me. He held her gaze for a long moment before answering. Because you stopped seeing yourself. Something about that, simple, honest, unpolished, undid her completely. Her eyes burned. She looked down, wiping a tear with the back of her hand. Evan didn't touch her this time. He didn't need to. His words had already done what his hands couldn't. They'd reached the part of her no one had touched in a long time. When she finally looked up again, she managed a small smile. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For not letting me quit, even when I already had. Evan's lips curved, barely noticeable but real. You're stronger than you think, Ren. You just need someone to remind you sometimes. She nodded slowly, her chest lighter than it had been in weeks. She stood to leave. Evan said quietly, almost to himself. And for the record, I'm glad you stayed. Ren paused at the door, a flicker of something uncertain, or maybe hopeful, in her eyes. Me too, she whispered. The days that followed were softer than Ren expected. Nothing magical happened. No grand gestures, no sudden confessions. Just stillness. And after weeks of chaos inside her chest, stillness felt like a luxury. She came in early one morning, the office half-lit and silent. Evan was already there, as always, his jacket off, sleeves rolled, glasses low on his nose as he read through a contract. He looked up the moment she stepped in. Morning, he said, his voice low, rough from hours of quiet work. Morning, she replied, setting her bag down. There was a pause, the kind that used to feel heavy but now felt safe. Evan gestured toward the corner table. Coffee's fresh. I made extra. Ren smiled faintly. You've been doing that a lot lately. He looked back at his papers. Maybe I just like knowing there's someone else around who drinks it right. She chuckled. You mean without drowning it in sugar? He didn't answer, but she saw the corner of his mouth twitch. These small exchanges became their routine. Coffee breaks that lasted 5 minutes longer than they should. Shared glances across the glass wall during meetings. And once, when her computer froze right before a major report, he walked over, crouched beside her desk, and fixed it himself, even though he could have easily called IT. "You don't have to do that," she said, watching him work. "I know," he replied without looking up. "But I wanted to." That wanted to did something to her. Small but real. By Friday, she found herself laughing again. Not the kind of polite office laughter that hides exhaustion, but something light and unguarded. Faith Lawson noticed first. "You're smiling again," Faith teased during lunch. "What happened? Did Evan finally approve your project, or just your mood?" Ren rolled her eyes, stirring her salad. "Stop it. Oh, come on. I've seen the way he looks at you. There's no way he—" "Ren," Faith interrupted, smirking. "He brings you coffee every morning. The man doesn't even remember to drink water during meetings, but he remembers how you take your coffee." Ren opened her mouth to argue, but her silence said enough. That afternoon, while everyone else left for the weekend, Ren stayed behind, finishing her report. Evan came out of his office, tie loosened, jacket slung over his arm. "You're still here?" he asked. "Just wrapping up." He walked to her desk, leaned against the edge. "You've been here all week before anyone else. You don't have to prove anything to me." She smiled without looking up. "Maybe I'm proving it to myself." He studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Fair enough." The air between them shifted again. That quiet, unspoken rhythm they'd somehow fallen into. "Are you hungry?" he asked suddenly. Ren blinked. "Sorry. Dinner," he clarified. "You've probably skipped lunch again." She hesitated. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Then let's call it a business review," he said with the faintest grin. "You can bill me for your time." That made her laugh. The kind of laugh that made her forget why she'd been so afraid to feel again. They ended up at a small diner a few blocks from the office. Nothing fancy, just warm lights, quiet booths, and the kind of place where no one cared who they were. They talked about everything but work. About music, the books she used to love, the cities he wanted to visit but never did. At one point, Ren caught him watching her. Not with intensity, but with quiet fascination, like he was memorizing the way her smile curved or the way her eyes softened when she relaxed. "What?" she asked, smiling. He shook his head slightly. "Nothing. Just, it's good to see you like this." "Like what?" "Alive." Her chest fluttered. "You really don't know when to stop saying things that stick, do you?" He smiled faintly, eyes steady on hers. "Maybe I don't want to stop." Ren looked away before he could read the warmth spreading across her cheeks. For the first time in months, she wasn't thinking about Sean. She wasn't thinking about the breakup, the tears, or the resignation letter still sitting in her drawer. She was thinking about Evan Pierce, and the way his voice made everything inside her feel quietly possible again. It started with little things. Ren didn't notice them at first. The pen that always appeared on her desk when hers went missing, the extra charger left plugged in near her workstation, the soft post-it notes with reminders she didn't remember writing. "Don't skip breakfast again. You're doing great, Parker." "Breathe." The handwriting was unmistakably Evan's. Quick, slanted, confident. She never asked why, and he never mentioned them. But somehow, those notes started to mean more than her morning coffee. He wasn't trying to fix her. He wasn't trying to rescue her. He was simply there. Steady, quiet, present in ways that didn't ask for acknowledgement. One afternoon, after a long meeting, she found a small white box on her desk. Inside was a pair of noise-canceling earbuds. A sticky note read, "For when the world gets too loud." She smiled, shaking her head. "You're ridiculous," she said when she walked into his office holding the box. He looked up from his laptop. "Why? You can't just buy people things because you notice they rub their temples too much." He leaned back, arms crossed. "Consider it a business investment. The less you get headaches, the faster the reports come in." Ren laughed, the sound spilling out before she could stop it. "You're impossible." He smiled slightly. "Maybe, but you're smiling again, so I'll take it." It was moments like that, quick, natural, unforced, that began to fill the silence that heartbreak had left in her life. Faith noticed the shift too. "Your boss is obsessed with you?" she whispered one afternoon, leaning across her desk. "Faith," Ren warned. "I'm serious. Do you realize he waits for you before leaving the office? Like, every single day." Ren tried to play it off, but her cheeks betrayed her. "He's just kind." Faith raised a brow. "And completely gone for you." That night, Evan offered her a ride home. Again. "You don't have to," she said automatically, clutching her bag. "I know," he replied, "but I want to." The drive was quiet, the city fading into streaks of light outside the window. Ren watched them pass, her reflection faint in the glass. "Why are you like this?" she asked suddenly. He glanced at her. "Like what?" "So considerate, so aware." He thought for a second before answering. "Because I know what it's like to feel unseen." The simplicity of it silenced her. They pulled up in front of her building, and for a moment, neither moved. "Thank you," she said softly. "For the ride." "For noticing," she said. He gave a small nod. Anytime, when she stepped out, the night air felt softer somehow. Not because of what he'd said, but because of what he hadn't, because his silence always seemed to say more than words ever could. Over the next few weeks, those small gestures became the language they spoke best. She started bringing him tea instead of coffee when he looked tired. He started texting her, "Made it home?" before midnight. Neither called it what it was, but they both knew. One evening, she left her scarf on his chair after a late meeting. The next morning, it was folded neatly on her desk, with another note. "You left this behind, but I think it suits my office better." She laughed softly when she read it, shaking her head. Ren Parker was falling again. Not fast, not foolishly, but carefully. This time, it wasn't the rush of passion or the promise of forever. It was warmth, patience, and the kind of attention that healed instead of hurt. Evan Pierce didn't need to say he cared, but he showed it. One quiet gesture at a time. By late October, the rhythm between Ren and Evan had changed completely. No one talked about it. Maybe no one even noticed, but she did. There was something in the way his eyes found her in a crowded meeting room. How his shoulders relaxed the moment she spoke. How the tension in his jaw eased when she laughed. And there was something in the way she started saving her best thoughts for their quiet moments together. The office felt different, softer somehow, like the world outside still rushed, but inside that glass-walled space, time took its time. One evening, the rain came heavy and unannounced. The others had already left, but Ren stayed back to finish a proposal. Evan stepped out of his office, his shirt sleeves damp from where he'd leaned into the open window earlier. "You're still here," he said, walking toward her desk. "You say that like you don't already know I'd be." He smiled. Point taken. Thunder rolled outside, low and distant. When the power flickered for a moment, Ren looked up, startled. The emergency lights hummed softly overhead. Evan crossed to the corner and grabbed a flashlight from the cabinet. "You keep a flashlight in your office?" she asked, amused. He shrugged, switching it on. "Prepared for everything." "Well, almost everything." Ren smiled faintly. "Except people who refuse to go home, apparently." He leaned on her desk, flashlight resting between them. The soft beam cast a warm glow across her face, catching the light in her eyes. "You're working too hard again," he said gently. "And you're watching too closely again." He didn't deny it. They stayed like that for a while. No words, just the sound of rain pressing softly against the windows. There was a calm in the silence that neither of them had felt in a long time. The kind of quiet that wasn't empty but full of everything they weren't saying. Ren finally closed her laptop. "You win," she said. "I'll stop." He smiled, that rare, unguarded one that softened all the edges of his face. "Good. Let's wait out the rain." They sat by the window, side by side, their reflections blending faintly against the city lights outside. "I used to love the rain," she said quietly. "Used to?" "Yeah." Then heartbreak turned it into background noise. He glanced at her. "You can take it back, you know?" She tilted her head. Take what back? The things that hurt, he said. You can give them new meaning. The rain, the coffee, the songs that used to remind you of him. You can rewrite them. Her lips parted slightly. Something in the way he said it landed deep. Rewrite them, she echoed softly. He nodded once. You already are. A silence fell again, but this time it was gentle. She could hear his steady breathing beside her, the soft tapping of rain on the glass, the faint hum of the city below. For a moment, Ren forgot about everything. Her past, the pain, even the letter still hidden in her drawer. There was just this. The warmth of someone sitting close enough to make her heartbeat feel less lonely. When she finally looked up, Evan was already looking at her. What? She asked. He shook his head slightly. You're quiet tonight. So are you. I don't have to talk when you're around, he said softly. That made her chest tighten. Not painfully this time, just enough to remind her she was still alive. She smiled faintly. That's dangerous, you know? What is? Feeling safe in silence. He looked out the window, rain glistening against the glass. Maybe it's not dangerous, he said. Maybe it's the start of something good. They stayed there until the rain stopped. No labels, no promises, just the quiet kind of closeness that only happens when two broken people finally stop pretending they're fine. When Ren went home that night, her clothes smelled faintly of rain and his cologne. Subtle, grounding, and impossible to forget. And for the first time in months, she didn't cry before bed. The office felt lighter lately, and everyone knew it had something to do with Ren Parker. Not that anyone said it aloud, but ever since she'd started smiling again, the air around Evan Pierce didn't feel as sharp either. On Thursday morning, the team was preparing for a client presentation. The kind that usually left everyone walking on eggshells. But that day, something shifted. Evan had just returned from a meeting downtown, jacket slung over one arm, sleeves rolled up like he'd walked through chaos but somehow came out winning. Ren was at the printer, juggling a thick stack of freshly printed pages. She tried to balance them in one hand while reaching for her coffee with the other. It went exactly how you'd imagine. Papers, coffee, and startled laughter. Whoa! Evan reached out instinctively, catching both the coffee cup and half the proposal sheets before they hit the floor. For a second, everything froze. Coffee dripping down a page, her hair slightly out of place, his hand brushing hers. Ren blinked, then laughed. That kind of laugh that starts small but spreads like sunlight. Okay. That's officially the universe telling me I need a break. Evan smirked. Or just a second pair of hands. She looked at the mess on the floor and grinned. You volunteering? I just saved your caffeine, he said. I think that earns me something. Like what? He paused, considering. A thank you. Maybe even one of those muffins you keep hiding in your drawer. Ren gasped softly, pretending to be scandalized. You've been going through my desk? Only the top drawer, he teased. Strictly for investigative purposes. She laughed again, the sound light and unguarded. It was the first time she'd laughed that freely in months, the kind that comes without permission, without fear. Faith peeked around the corner, smirking. Should I come back later? Or are we all just pretending this is still about the presentation? Ren rolled her eyes, cheeks flushed. It's about spilled coffee. Thank you very much. Evan looked at Faith, then at Ren. And possibly muffins. Faith grinned, shaking her head. Right? Muffins. Then she disappeared, leaving the air charged with quiet amusement. Evan bent to pick up the fallen pages, handing them back one by one. You know, he said lightly, you laugh differently now. Ren looked up at him, curious. Differently? Yeah, it's real. Her smile faltered just slightly, not in sadness, but in that fragile realization that someone had noticed what others didn't. Maybe I finally remembered how, she said softly. He nodded, his eyes lingering on her for a heartbeat longer than they should have. Don't forget again. The way he said it, low, sure, almost protective, made her chest ache in a way she couldn't explain. Later that afternoon, when everyone gathered in the conference room, Ren accidentally met his gaze from across the table. He didn't smile this time, He just looked calm, steady, like he was quietly rooting for her. And somehow that was enough to make her heart steady too. The presentation went smoothly, the clients left impressed, and the team exhaled in relief. But even hours later, Ren could still feel that moment, the warmth of shared laughter and the weight of words that meant more than they should. That night, she texted Faith. "Ren, you ever feel like you're starting to feel again?" Faith. "Yeah. Usually right before something beautiful or dangerous happens." Ren read it twice. Then she smiled faintly and turned off her phone. She didn't know which one it would be, beautiful or dangerous. But for the first time since everything fell apart, she wasn't afraid to find out. It happened on a Tuesday, not a Friday night or a grand moment under city lights. Just a quiet Tuesday that started like every other. Ren was the last to leave again, sitting at her desk long after the others had gone. The soft glow from her laptop painted her face in blues and silvers. The office was silent except for the hum of the air conditioner and the occasional sigh she didn't mean to let out. Evan walked out of his office, coat in hand, and paused when he saw her still there. He hesitated, then dropped the coat over the arm of the couch and crossed to her desk. "You're still working?" She didn't look up, trying to finish this report before the board meeting. He leaned against the edge of her desk, arms folded. "You said that an hour ago." She smiled faintly. "You keeping track now?" "I do when it's you." That made her finally glance up. "You don't have to worry about me, Evan." "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know, but I do anyway." The room fell into a soft silence. She went back to typing, pretending his words hadn't shaken something loose inside her. "You shouldn't. I'm fine." "No," he said, his voice low, steady. "You're not. You keep pretending you are, but I see it, the way you hold your breath before every sentence, like you're afraid of taking up space again." Her fingers froze on the keyboard. He stepped closer, not to corner her, just enough for his voice to reach her gently. "Ren, you don't have to hold everything together here. Not with me." She swallowed hard, eyes on the screen that had suddenly blurred. "Why do you care so much?" He exhaled, looking at her for a long time before saying, "Because I can't seem to stop." There it was, simple, unpolished, real. She looked up, eyes wide and glassy. "You can't say things like that." "I just did." "Evan." He shook his head, stepping back slightly as if trying to give her space. "I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know that you matter here. That you matter. Not your work. Not your title. Just you." For a long time, the only sound was the faint hum of her computer. Then she stood, closing the laptop. "You shouldn't say that to your employee." "I know. And yet you did." "I couldn't help it." She wanted to be angry, to remind him of boundaries and professionalism and every rule they both knew. But all she could do was stand there, heart pounding, trying to steady her breath. He took a careful step forward, his voice dropping softer. "Ren, do you have any idea what it's been like watching you walk through your days like you're still carrying someone else's goodbye?" Her throat tightened. "Don't." He stopped. "Then tell me to leave." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The truth was, she didn't want him to leave. Not this time. She exhaled shakily and whispered, "You make it hard to forget." He gave a small, almost sad smile. "Maybe you're not supposed to forget. Maybe you're just supposed to heal." Something inside her cracked, quietly, like a frozen lake finally giving way to spring. She didn't move closer. Neither did he. But in that fragile distance between them, something unspoken settled. Something too gentle to name, too real to deny. And when she finally whispered, "I should go home," he nodded, eyes soft. "Okay," he said, "but promise me one thing." "What?" He hesitated. "Don't stop showing up. Not for work. For life." She smiled faintly, blinking back tears. "I'll try." He watched her leave, the click of her heels echoing through the empty hallway. And when the door closed behind her, Evan leaned against her desk, running a hand through his hair. Half regret, half relief. He hadn't planned to say it, but he knew he'd mean it for a long time. It had been 3 quiet weeks since Evan's confession that no one said a word about it. No lines were crossed, but something between them had changed. A new tenderness in every glance, every small silence, until he showed up. Sean Curtis. It was a gray Friday morning, the kind where the sky can't decide between rain and sunlight. Ren had just stepped into the office, coffee in hand, when she froze mid-step. There he was, standing at the reception desk, all confidence and that same disarming smile that used to melt her without trying. But this time, she didn't melt. She just went still. "Ren," he said softly when he spotted her. "Hey!" Her stomach tightened. "Sean, what are you doing here?" He raised both hands slightly, as if surrendering. "Relax. I'm not here to make things complicated. I just wanted to talk." "About what?" "About us." There it was, the word that used to mean everything. Now it just felt heavy. Before she could answer, Evan's voice came from behind her. "Everything okay here?" Ren turned to see him standing by the hallway. Calm, collected, his expression unreadable but his presence steady, grounding. Sean's smile faltered slightly. Evan Pierce, the CEO himself, didn't mean to interrupt. "You didn't," Evan said evenly. "But this is a workplace. If you need to talk to an employee, you can schedule it properly." Ren stepped between them, trying to ease the tension. "It's fine, Evan. I'll handle it." He looked at her for a moment, his eyes saying 1,000 things he couldn't in front of everyone, then nodded slowly. "All right, but don't let him keep you from work too long." When Evan walked away, Sean exhaled sharply. "Wow, protective much." "He's my boss, Sean." He gave her a look. "Yeah, sure." She crossed her arms, her voice even. "Say what you came to say." "I made a mistake," he said simply. "You know me. I panic when things get too real. But I've had time to think. And I miss you. I miss us." Ren's heart clenched. Once upon a time, that line would have pulled her right back. Now it just made her tired. "Sean," she said quietly, "you didn't panic. You left. And you made sure I believed it was my fault." He frowned. "That's not fair." "No, it's not," she said. "But it's true." He stepped closer. "Ren, come on. We were good together. You don't really see yourself staying here forever, do you? Working under some guy who clearly—" "Don't," she cut in sharply. He paused. "What?" "Don't finish that sentence." The steel in her voice startled him. For the first time, she saw confusion, even hurt, flicker across his face. "You've changed," he said quietly. She nodded once. "Yeah, I had to." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was nothing left to say. After he left, Ren stood by the window staring out at the skyline. Her reflection looked different now. Stronger, still soft, but no longer breakable. A knock on the door pulled her back. Evan stepped in, holding a folder but not pretending it was about work. "You okay?" She nodded. He just wanted closure. Evan's voice was quiet. "And did he get it?" "I think I did," she said. Something in her tone made him set the folder down and walk closer. "Good," he said softly. She smiled faintly, her eyes glistening but clear. "You didn't have to step in earlier." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." For a moment, neither spoke. The tension that had once lived in her chest was gone, replaced by something steadier. "Evan?" she said after a pause. "Yeah. Thank you. For not trying to save me. For just standing there." He smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. "You didn't need saving, Ren. You just needed to remember who you are." And in that quiet office, under the faint hum of the city below, she realized something simple and undeniable. She was done being the girl who begged someone to stay. This time, someone stayed without being asked. Monday mornings used to be Ren's least favorite part of the week. They felt heavy, full of noise, pressure, and the constant reminder that life moves on whether you're ready or not. But this Monday felt different. She woke up early, brewed her coffee without rushing, and actually smiled when she caught her reflection. There was something new in her eyes, Not the girl who once broke down over a resignation letter, but a woman who had learned to rebuild herself one heartbeat at a time. When she got to the office, Faith was already there, humming to herself as she organized files. "Someone's glowing," Faith teased, looking up with a grin. "New skincare routine or something deeper?" Ren chuckled softly. "Let's call it peace of mind." Faith smirked. "Peace of mind looks good on you." Before Ren could reply, the familiar sound of Evan's office door opening filled the room. He stepped out, phone in one hand, his tie loose, and his usual composed look replaced by something almost soft. "Parker," he said, pausing by her desk. "Can I see you for a second?" Faith gave her a knowing look. "Peace of mind, huh?" "Shut up," Ren muttered under her breath, following Evan inside. His office felt the same warm light, faint smell of cedar, and the steady hum of quiet. But something about the air between them was lighter now, freer. He gestured for her to sit, then leaned against the edge of his desk. "So, about Friday, you handled yourself well." "Thank you," she said. "I just wanted to move on without turning it into a scene." "You did more than that," he said. "You showed him you're not the same woman he walked away from." She smiled faintly. "I didn't do it for him." "I know," he said. "That's what made it powerful." For a moment, silence filled the space. Not uncomfortable, just aware. Ren finally exhaled. "Evan, I need to tell you something." He looked at her, steady and patient. "Go on." "When I came to this office with my resignation letter, I didn't plan to stay a day longer. I was done. With work, with people, with everything. I didn't think I could breathe without breaking." He didn't interrupt, just listened. "But you didn't let me walk away. And at first I thought it was just because you didn't want to lose an employee. But I see it now. You saw something in me that I didn't even recognize anymore." Her voice trembled slightly. "You saw someone worth staying for." Evan's expression softened, a quiet smile pulling at the corner of his lips. "You were worth staying for, Ren. You always were." She swallowed, the words catching in her throat. "You said something to me once, that maybe I wasn't supposed to forget, just heal. I think I finally did." He nodded, taking a step closer. "And now, she said, smiling gently, "I want to stay, not because I'm broken, not because I need you to fix me, but because for the first time I want to be here." He studied her face, the sincerity in her eyes. "Ren Parker," he said softly, "you have no idea how long I've waited to hear that." She laughed under her breath, shaking her head. "I think I do." For a few seconds they just stood there. Two people who had survived their own storms, finding calm in each other without even trying. Then, as if drawn by something unspoken, he reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. She didn't flinch this time. She leaned in. The kiss wasn't rushed or wild. It was slow, deep, the kind of kiss that feels like a quiet promise, not of forever, but of right now, of peace. When they finally broke apart, she whispered, "So, no resignation letter this time?" He smiled, voice low. "Not unless you're resigning from pretending you're fine." She laughed, the sound soft and real. "Deal." Later that day, as the office buzzed with life, Ren sat at her desk, typing away with the faintest smile. Faith walked past and whispered, "You stayed, huh?" Ren didn't look up. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I stayed." And somewhere behind his office glass, Evan looked up from his work and smiled too.